Good day, and thank you for joining us for another installment of our Day in the Life series. Today we're going to take a look at a day in the life of field service professionals within Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement. A brief agenda for our time today. We'll start off with some introductions of the presenters, give an overview of our Day in the Life series, but also talk about what we plan to show today, and we'll spend the majority of the time actually in a live demo of the field service software. And then we'll wrap things up when we talk about pricing. My name is Jonathan Kroll. I'm the Sales Development Manager here at Enterdyne Artis, and I'll be your host. I also have Matt Fonts, who is our Chief Technology Officer, and he'll be the demo specialist today. So hopefully you've tuned in to some of our other Day in the Life series installments. We started with a day in the life of a marketing professional. We're really talking about before it gets to the sales reps with lead generation and automating the marketing processes. And then we talked about a day in the life of a sales professional where they're managing opportunities and accounts, creating quotes using product catalogs, just trying to sell more into the contacts and accounts that we have. And then the step after that is the ongoing service that you provide in our day in the life of a customer service representative. And we talked about service contracts and case management and how your customers can become self-service with a portal. And today we're going to take a look at a day in the life of a field service professional. And we'll look at the experience from a dispatcher's point of view and what it would be like to be a field technician actually out in the field and using a mobile device, fulfilling work orders, and then from a management's perspective and all the KPIs that they want to be able to monitor and track on a dashboard. And then we'll finish things up with a customer's perspective in the field service day in the life of. So to highlight some specific areas that we plan to cover, either verbally or as part of a live demo, we'll look at some dashboards and talk about the native business process flows. We'll show the mobile app and the functionality that you would have in the field, what the scheduling board would look like for a dispatcher for creating work orders and then actually sending those to the field techs, and using notifications and workflows to be able to streamline the process and make sure that everybody is aware of what they need to be doing and when. Talk about how all this stuff is integrated with Outlook, and then again we'll cover a customer portal as well. And with all that said, we'll dive right into the live demo. So Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I've got 4 different scenes that we're going to go through, and it's going to be from the viewpoint of a dispatcher, a technician, somebody who's interested in seeing management level information, and then the view from a customer, from a customer's perspective. And as Jonathan mentioned earlier, we've done several of these day in the life webinars over the last couple of years, and
Can you just show the screen still?
we're not sharing a screen. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you for the message, Sarah, our marketing manager, for letting us know we weren't showing the screen. Apologies, folks, but you should be able to see Matt's schedule board.
Sure. Yeah, so the field service application is really an extension of the customer service application. So when you're thinking about customer service, you're thinking about cases, you're thinking about contracts, SLAs, things of that nature. And so CRM or Dynamics has had case management or service since day one, so since they released it back in 2003. What field service is again, it's an extension, and specifically is handling dispatch. So if you need to periodically go do preventative maintenance, or if you need to go and do something break fix in nature, then you can go actually take a technician with particular skills and then send those technicians to a location to do work. And so that's primarily what we're going to talk about from those 4 viewpoints that I mentioned earlier. And if it's been a little while since you've taken a look at Dynamics, you'll notice right away that the UI has changed again. Every 3 or 4 years, Microsoft seems to kind of refresh the UI to be modern and follow all the current web paradigms. And this is the newest iteration. They call it the unified interface, but this is actually, I think, the 3rd version of the unified interface. And essentially all that means is that whether you're looking at the application through a browser, or whether you're looking at it through your tablet or through your phone, it's going to look generally the same. And I'm going to show you what that experiences through different interfaces as we go through our presentation today. From a navigation perspective, if I click the drop down here, I can see all of those different apps. So, kind of again alluding back to Jonathan's discussion around the other presentations we've done. If I was going to work in sales, then I'd pull up my sales hub. If I was going to go work in customer service, I'd go into customer service. And if I was going to go into marketing, assuming I had the marketing app installed in this demo environment, I would click on marketing. So again, the reason for pointing this out is all these different applications live within the same database, live within the same tenant. There's no different URL that you're going to manage all these things. It's all still within what we used to refer to as CRM, and now Microsoft refers to as Dynamics 365. All right. So again, just today we're focusing entirely on field service. So this is where we're going to start. We're just going to, again, I've already selected it, so I'll just drop this off here, and I'm just going to choose my field service app. And the first thing it's going to bring us into is a dashboard. We're starting with the dispatcher profile. So what does my day-to-day look like in terms of a dispatcher? So again, that handoff is really, a case came in from a customer. I can't solve it over the phone. I can't solve it by sending a knowledge base article or something like that. I got to do a dispatch. All right. So primarily we're going to be working within work orders, bookings, the schedule board, and agreements. So I'm going to walk through those records, and we'll talk about how they work within the larger context of Dynamics. All right. So starting with the schedule board, because that's kind of the top-down view of what's going on within your organization. We'll wait for this to load up. And looking at the schedule board, there's a lot of stuff on here, and it can be a little bit overwhelming if you try to absorb it all at once. But I'll go through the important sections, and then if there's questions on any of the other sections, then we can take those offline. But essentially, this is a view that's going to show all of the different resources that can do work for you. And so those may be employees, and if they're employees, they're going to be set up in CRM as users, or they may be contractors. And if they're contractors, then they're just going to be set up in Dynamics, as a contact under an account. All right. But they all show in this view. So I can scroll down here, and in this demo environment, I've got it's showing us 82 different folks that are set up within the system that all have the ability to do work. Now, the work that they're able to do is set up in the system as their skill set. So I can say that, maybe if Jonathan is set up in our environment and he has the ability to fix, a point of sale system, then I can set him with the skill to repair a point of sale. And additionally, I can set a characteristic on that skill and say that Jonathan is either proficient, or maybe he's new at it, or maybe he's extremely proficient at that particular skill. From an absolute high level perspective, though, we've got work orders that need to be done, and we've got people that are able to do those work orders, and we've got our time showing when those work orders are scheduled to be done. All right. So this is the main view for the schedule board. There's different ways you can look at it. The first three here are really looking at the same information, just slightly differently. If I click the vertical view, it just pivots it, so I see time and the y-axis, and then the people in the x-axis instead of what we were seeing a second ago. And the other one that I think is fun anyway is the map view, and this kind of lays out in relation to the home office where are our folks dispatched. So I can mouse over this, and I can see here's a booking for work order WO00002. The customer is Arrow Heating and Sheet Metal, and the person that's actually dispatched there is Abraham McCormick, and it's from 8:15 to 10:15, and I can see the status is scheduled. All right. Likewise, if I look at this one, I can see it has a different color, and that color is different because they're actually traveling, so they're on their way to this work order. And then down here, this color is also different because it's actually in progress. And this is all configurable. So if I go back to my view here, this is the default schedule board. You can actually create your own schedule boards, and you can do that for a number of different use cases. One, if you had different segments of the business and you wanted to have a completely separate schedule board with different resources and different timing or whatever, then you could actually manage that on a completely separate schedule board. If you wanted to change the color scheme, if you wanted to change some of the increments and how it's laid out, that's all configurable within this new schedule board option here. Okay. So there's a lot of options. We're not going to go through all of it. I'm just kind of making you guys aware that, in terms of setting up and using your schedule board, it is pretty flexible in the way that you can set it up. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is actually take a look at a work order. And so we're going to create a work order for one of our customers. And we're just going to assume that, they've already created a case. They called in, they said, we're down, something's not working. We need somebody to come help us. We tried everything that we could try from remote. We need to dispatch somebody to actually fix this problem. All right, so here's our active work orders, and essentially we're just going to create a new one. Okay. So when we're looking at the work order, there's immediately you'll notice some fields on here that are interesting. At least I find them interesting. The first one is the service account. So that's the account where you're actually doing the work, and the second one on here is the billing account. So that's who's paying the bill or who actually has the contract with you. All right. So if I do the lookup here, I'm just going to choose. I'll choose 7-Eleven. And then I can see in this case, the billing account for this one is defaults to 7-Eleven. If it was somebody else, if there was a parent organization or whatever that you actually had the contract with, you could select them here. All right. Scrolling down through here, anything with an asterisk is required. So we got to make sure we fill out, all of those fields. And then there's a bunch of additional fields. And again, these are configurable, but that can help, one, drive this work order through a business process flow up here at the top, can help you, actually get this, correctly scheduled. But ultimately, or additionally, it's going to provide additional information to your technician. So when they're, on site and they're trying to, work on this problem, anything that you've recorded in here is going to be visible to the technician. Okay. So I'm going to choose my work order type. And in this case, it's just going to be a diagnose and repair. And it defaults in our price list, so this particular customer's on that price list, so that's how they're going to get their pricing. And an important field on here is the incident type. So when I click this drop down, there's some different options, and I'm just going to choose one. I'm going to choose unexpected reboot. So their point of sale system, they called in and they said it's just rebooting. I don't know why. I need somebody to come out here and fix it. I can't take any money. Obviously a big problem, right? So I'm going to choose this as my primary incident type. And the incident type is important because it's actually going to default a good bit of the task level information that the technician needs to do. All right, so and that's useful if you have a larger group of technicians and you want to make sure that they're all generally doing work the same way. All right, so I'm going to save this record. And we'll give it just a second because what I was talking about with the service tasks actually runs asynchronously. There's some logic behind the scenes that's taking that information tied to the incident type and then creating the service tasks and rolling that all up into the work order. All right, so give it just a second and then it will show up here and I can see we got to read the diagnosis codes, we got to diagnose the issue, we got to perform the repair, we got to make sure we do the validate. Here's the time that's generally going to, that each one of those steps is going to take. That's not necessarily locked in. I mean, the actual time is what it actually is going to take, but in terms of actually performing the scheduling, this is what's going to default in. So this, you can see here, this is 2 hours of work. So when we go to schedule somebody to do this work order, it's going to schedule 2 hours of time. Okay. So that's the work order. That's we haven't actually booked anybody yet. If I pop back over to my schedule board here, we'll notice now that we have a work order towards the bottom here that's not scheduled, right? And so there's a number of different ways that you can schedule these work orders or book technicians to do the work. The easiest one is just to pop back over to our schedule board, look who's available, and actually schedule them. Again, if you have a more complex scenario where maybe it's something that only a certain couple of folks within your organization have the skill set to do, then you could use some of this filtering. If I pop this out, I could go back and say only show me people with certain skills, certain proficiencies within our list here. Additionally, if you wanted somebody just within your organization, you didn't want to use an outsourced vendor, you can define all that here as well. All right, but again, from a absolute easiest way to do this is just to take this work order and physically drag it up to where you want it to be. And you can see as I'm dragging it around, it's changing the time. And I can just drag it. I'm going to say I'm going to schedule this one for 12:15. And actually, I should have done a little bit later. You can see it's overlapping. So I'm going to schedule it for, what was that, 1:30? For Allison Dixon. All right, so she's got a work order. She's scheduled to finish at 1:15. And we saw on our map earlier that these locations were relatively close together. But what I've done here is I've created her booking record. All right, so Allison knows as soon as that booking is created, she gets a notification on her device saying you've got a new booking. This is where you need to be, at a particular time. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about from the dispatcher, day in the life of perspective is agreements. So we've talked now from a really high level about our scheduling board, our work order, and our bookings. And this is all manual, right? But what do you do in a scenario where you have preventative maintenance that you've got across a large grouping of customers, and you want those work orders to automatically be created, and you want those bookings to automatically be created on some type of cadence? It can be a kind of a scheduling or a logistic nightmare if you have to do all that manually. So the way that Dynamics Field Service handles that is they have agreements set up so that you can automatically create those records. And so I've got a sample one out here that I created earlier for 7-Eleven, and the agreement number is 00001. This is essentially a contract. If I open this up, it's gonna tell us, what have we agreed to. So again, I've got my service account, my billing account, what's our status, I've contracted it, what's our price list. So pretty simple stuff here. Important fields are, what's our start date and our end date, and what is the duration. And then over here on the right, these two records, which are related records to the agreement, are also very important. The first one is the booking setup record. So specifically within the booking setup record within the agreement, I'm saying what are we actually going to do and how often. All right. So I can look through here and I can see what are the services that we're doing. In this case, we're just doing an inspection. So periodically we're going to go and inspect our equipment and make sure everything looks good. And how long before a due date are we going to create the work order so that the dispatcher can make sure everything's lining up correctly from a scheduling perspective. And then on what cadence are we going to do it? So if I click into this booking recurrence, I can say I want to do it this inspection monthly. I can define the day of the month, and you can go in and set some leeway on those as well. So some customers will say I want this needs to occur during the first week of the month. I don't really care when, but it needs to be during the first week of the month, and you can set that up within here. You'll notice that the system automatically creates some of the work orders or cases or however we've got it set up over here on the right. So I can see I've already got one scheduled out in November, and I've already got one scheduled out in December as well. The other record within that agreement is our invoicing setup. Okay, so I can look inside of our invoicing setup, and I can see this is the recurrence that we're actually going to do our billing. And the system, again, will automatically create those bills so that, every month, if the contract dictates that it's going to be $400, then the invoice automatically gets, created for $400 and can go to the customer or can go to your ERP, whatever you will desire in terms of how you want that to flow to the customer. Okay. So that's obviously, the dispatcher profile is obviously the most complex, and that's what I intended to show from that perspective. What I want to do now is shift into the technician profile, and I'm going to show this on an iPad. So I've got it using an application to show what I'm having on my iPad here, so that it will share for you guys. What I mentioned earlier in terms of the unified interface, if I click the navigation element over here, you'll notice these are pretty close to identical. I've got my dashboards, my work orders, my scheduling board. The interface doesn't really change significantly. All right. So if I wanted to go and look at the work orders in the system, and I wanted to look at it from a dispatcher's perspective, I can absolutely do that. So that's great news. You can work from anywhere, from whenever you want. You can do it on your iPad even as a dispatcher. But again, we're in the technician's perspective. So at this point, I'd want to go and look and see what are my bookings. All right, so I'm just going to toggle out and look at the bookings that are in the system, and I'm just going to choose this one from 1:30. That was the one we created earlier. All right, so I can look inside of my booking and I can see, what is the duration, who is this for, what's the status, is it actually scheduled, are we solid booked, or are we liquid booked, which means, this may still change. What are we actually doing here is going to be in the actual work order itself. But I'm going to say at this point, that I'm switching this from scheduled. Maybe I finished up my other engagement. I want to click this lookup if it will let me. course, it's not going to let me. What I'm trying to do here is actually switch this to traveling. And the reason for that is that I want to actually let the customer know that when I'm traveling, I want to let the customer know that I'm traveling so that they'll have an idea that I'm going to be there in 15 minutes or so. And this is particularly useful just for customer satisfaction. Instead of giving them a 2-hour window or whatever, you can be a little bit more accurate because you're giving them more real-time notifications on when you're moving around. I think this isn't letting me do the lookup because I'm using this reflector thing. All right, so at this point, I've changed my booking. I've set my status to be traveling. If I want to go and actually look at the work order, I can see the information here. I'm just going to drill into the work order, and again, because the dispatcher set all this up for me, I can see most of the information that I'm going to care about right here on my iPad. So I can scroll down. I can see what is the work order type. I can see what's wrong here. I've got an unexpected reboot on this. I can go and click over on my service tasks area, and I can see what specifically do I need to do in order to diagnose and solve this problem. So these are the 4 tasks that we saw earlier. I can select one of them and just mark it complete when I'm done with it. All right, and go to the next one. As soon as it's done, I can mark it complete. And this is particularly useful when you're trying to communicate to a customer. What did you actually do? All right, so I can say when a customer calls me, if I'm a dispatcher, if I'm a customer service representative, and they're asking about a particular work order, I can say, well, my technician, I can give them the technician's name, came out there and they did these 4 things to help you resolve your problem. And that's just good information to be able to regurgitate to a customer when they ask for it. All right, so once I'm done with all of this work, back on our summary screen, I can change the status to complete, and I can actually capture the customer signature. I can just go in here and just fill it out. I'm sorry I write like a 4-year-old, but you can kind of get the idea here. It's a signature. And when I'm done, I just hit this mark and it locks in the signature. I can change the status from open scheduled to open complete, and that's going to kick off another workflow, and that I'll show you here shortly, that actually sends off a survey to the customer and asks them to just provide some quick feedback on their experience. Okay. Now this is a very, very simple scenario. I didn't have to use any parts. I didn't have to use any equipment. I didn't have to use. There were no trucks in play. There was nothing like that. But just so you're aware, you can get relatively complex with the field service system and the setup. If I look in the settings area here, I can have different equipment. I can do inventory. I can do transfers. I can do purchase orders. All of that can take place within field service. I just don't necessarily have time to show that during this 30-minute demo. But just to be kind of aware, if there's a requirement, I need to make sure that I have a truck for this. I need to make sure that truck is stocked with equipment. I need to make sure that a technician can request a part when they determine it's needed. All of that can be done within field service here. Okay.
And just to point out that one component that you hovered over a moment ago, Matt, was the IoT. So there is Internet of Things capabilities that are available as part of the field service application. For example, if you're monitoring equipment at a customer site and you see that there's overheating and you want to be able to create some work order off of that instance, that Internet of Things trigger, that is some extensive capability that's available as well. And that's just saw that was highlighted on the left side there. I wanted to point it out.
Thank you, Jonathan. Again, so that's a really simple scenario from a technician's perspective. The nice thing here is that they didn't have to bring a laptop with them. They could do this all on their mobile phone, although I showed it on a tablet just for today's sake. But it's really back to that work anywhere, work anytime mentality. Wherever you are, as long as you've got an internet connection, and you can get to your data. And there's actually 2 flavors of this application. One of them also has offline capability. If you need to be able to do things offline, if you're working out where there's no reliable internet connection, you can use the tablet app that supports offline as well. Okay. So the next perspective that we're going to cover is from a manager's perspective, and this one's pretty quick. But just being able to go in and quickly see the information that I care about. If you're trying to set up a view for your boss or whomever, and you don't necessarily want to teach them all the ins and outs of how field service works and all that, you can drop all the stuff that they care about onto a dashboard. And this is just basic, CRM functionality. If you're familiar with working with Dynamics over the years, they've had dashboards for a long time. I go back into my service area. So this is the first thing you see. This is a default dashboard. It's out of the box, and this is just showing you the different work orders that have come in, if they're resolved, how they were resolved, what status they're in, whether they're in diagnosis, whether they've been fixed, what are our top 10 billing accounts. But the thing I want you guys to take away here is really the configurability of these dashboards. So any one of these dashboards are configurable per user. So I can go in and I can just say, I want my own dashboard, and I started from that base level dashboard, but I also want to see just the my account list, the ones that are the accounts that I need to follow up with on a periodic basis. I can just go in here and add a list. I can just say accounts and just show me my active accounts. I can go and just resize this. And this all lives within Dynamics, so there's not a separate application that you have to load or a separate license, whatever. It's all just going to be right on your dashboard within Dynamics, and I can interact with these lists, with these widgets. I can pop them out and see bigger views of them. I can view the data that made up that chart. I click here and do view records. Then I can actually see these records that made up that chart. And I can set this up for every individual in the organization if it's a requirement. Okay. Go down here and I'll look at the one that we were modifying a second ago. You can see our accounts that I follow up with periodically. Okay. The other dashboarding capability that you can utilize is Power BI. And many of you may have heard of or used Power BI in the past. It's Microsoft's analytics tool, their BI tool. And it's gotten pretty good over the years. It's probably 10 years old in level of maturity at this point, and it's got a lot of different capabilities, and it's integrated with Dynamics, out of the box. So you can go in and you can add things like show me work orders, show me these different statuses. And I've got just a couple really quick representations here of what you can do with Power BI. So I can create different types of charts. These charts are interacting with different maps. It's got different lists. It's got different bars showing a timeline. You can show individual metrics. So if you want somebody to just interact with the end result of your data, you can set them up a Power BI dashboard, and they can refresh it periodically to show what they care about. Okay. So that's the management perspective, and the last one on here that I want to show you really quickly is the customer perspective. And I'm going to show a workflow to kind of illustrate what a customer would see. I know we're almost out of time here, so I'm going to go pretty quickly. But if I go into our settings area, I click our gear and I go to advanced settings. I'm going to show you a process that I set up that kind of illustrates how you can interact with your customers. All right, so I'm going to click our drop down here and I'll go to our processes. And specifically what I'm going to show you is I want to send that, remember we talked about this earlier, I want to send a customer an email whenever a booking occurs and a technician is on their way, so that they're aware of the status of that technician. And then when we are done, I want to send them a survey. So this is again, it's not development. It doesn't even really require an IT person. You just need somebody who kind of understands the workflow engine. So what I've done here is I've created a new process that triggers whenever a bookable resource booking is created. I know that seems kind of redundant, a bookable resource booking. It's essentially whenever somebody gets booked or whenever the status of that booking changes. So right here I'm saying if a bookable resource switches their status to traveling, then I'm just popping off an email to the customer, and it's going to be from the CRM system and to whoever requested the work, and it's just going to say Jonathan is on his way. Okay. And then the second scenario here is when the work is actually complete. Again, I'm going to send an email from the CRM system to the person that requested the work, and in this case I'm just going to pop off, and this is a very, very simple survey, but it's just going to say, can you just give me some feedback on your experience with your technician? And I can just say, Jonathan was great. And I can submit it. Now the nice thing, because this is all linked together, the email originated from the work order, I can go back to that work order and I can actually see the survey and the interactions, the activities directly in line with both the work order and the account. So I can kind of use that to generate it's an overall satisfaction with that account, or another use case, maybe I can kind of look at a technician and see how they're performing amongst certain tasks. Okay, and then the last thing I was going to show you, again from the customer journey, is there's a concept of portals that Microsoft created. It's been a few years now, but they continue to improve it. And there's one that is out of the box with field service. Actually, this one specifically is with customer service, but it allows a customer to just go in and interact with the CRM system via a portal. So in this case, I'm just going to open up a new case. This one's saying their printer goes offline, so it's going to look into the knowledge base and suggest some things to the customer that they can try before they actually contact you. Okay, none of them worked, so I'm actually going to start a case. And this is again from the customer's perspective. It's still not working. And so at this point, it's going to pop open a chat. And it's going to, again, suggest some things to fix the problem. And then relatively quickly, the customer's getting frustrating because it's not talking to a person, so it's going to toggle to an actual person. And all of that chat history and the ability to continue the chat is just going to pop in line with either a technician or a dispatcher so that you can get the appropriate person to actually solve the problem. And again, that's Microsoft's portals functionality that's built and integrated tightly into Dynamics 365. And it's just another way for your customers to engage you. All right, so I'm going to toggle out of here and hand it back over to Jonathan.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Matt. And let's see. Just quickly, we will jump over to this deck and talk a little bit about some pricing. Now, this just changed October 1st, 2019, so there's a new pricing structure. And I welcome you to give us a call so that we can talk through this further over a phone call, because it'll be a lot easier to do versus, now it's the slideshow so we get the animations. Thank you, Matt. Really the four core components of customer engagement are sales, customer service, field service, and project service automation. We've got videos for the majority of those. But just to talk a little bit about the pricing structure, so you have what's being called a base application, and that's the main app that that user needs access to. And those four apps are all $95 per month per user. But then you can attach additional applications depending on the access that a user needs to other areas in the system. So for example, maybe I'm the sales guy, I'm chasing my opportunities, but I also need to go in and create work orders for the technicians. As just an example of why I may need an attach app. But then you have the idea of a team member user, which is a read-only access to all the apps. And it's worth noting that that team member use right is built into the base apps. So if I'm a sales user and I'm working on my opportunities and orders or in quotes and orders and all that, I just need to be able to see the work orders in field service. I would not need to license anything beyond that sales app. I would already get my read-only access to the other applications. There is a marketing solution as well. It's either available as a standalone or you can attach it to the existing customer engagement licenses. And this is based on a per tenant, not a per user license. And it's also on the number of contacts that you're going to market to. And something that I just wanted to point out, that there are what's called professional versions of the sales and customer service applications that are slightly cheaper than the enterprise versions of these applications, which would be the $95 price point. And as far as just some basic implementation fees, obviously we would love to talk about you to understand what your specific business requirements are so that we could get better refined numbers. But whether it's just basic training or fairly straightforward implementation or something much more complex and sophisticated, we can help you out, and we can certainly help you understand what that actual cost could be to your organization. And then with that said, we'll put up the contact us slide. We have our phone number and email, and we welcome you to go to our website and check out more information. And looks like we'll take a moment to look at any questions if anything has come up, which I don't believe we may have any questions. But if you do, please reach out to us. And actually, I think we may have one here.
Yeah, it looks like there is a question, Jonathan. Can you generate invoices in the field?
Thank you, Sarah, because I could not quite see the question. It was hidden there. So, yes, this solution does have the ability to create invoices, but it is not, a full AP solution. You're not going to receive payment necessarily into this. A lot of our customers would integrate this with their ERP software, so that's kind of the typical handoff of we create the invoice in field service, and that is then integrated into the ERP for payment processing.
That said, if you wanted to integrate something where you were taking payment, from a credit card reader or something like that, there are integrations for that. So if if you had a scenario where you went out there and you just wanted to collect $500 down payment or something like that, there's certainly some options there.
There was one other question. They asked, does this integrate with Dynamics GP?
Absolutely.
Yes, it does. We actually internally use Dynamics GP, and so we're using Dynamics sales and marketing and service along with Dynamics GP, and we're integrating customer level data and things like sales information, opportunity information, all that kind of stuff is flowing back and forth from GP. All right. Is there anything else?
Sarah, do you mind helping with the questions? I'm not able to quite see it on our screen.
Yep, there's just one last question. Is this solution able to integrate with QuickBooks?
I personally have not integrated it with QuickBooks. I know there's also different versions of QuickBooks. There's some of them that have a local database, which you can use QODBC to actually get in and pull data back and forth. And there's some of them that are online, which I believe have, web services nowadays. That's a good question. We could probably discuss offline. We could determine exactly which version of QuickBooks, and we can talk about what an integration would look like there.
That looks like that's all for questions.
Okay. Well, again, we welcome any offline questions as well, and we will send recordings out for the videos, so if that sparks anything, we welcome you to reach out to us. We appreciate the time, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.